Okay. So from firefighter, to getting out of that firefighting mode, can fit to leader, getting out of the daily drama can feel incredibly difficult, can't it? Because you're always reactive. That's what you're doing. You're doing reactive management at the moment. So when you're putting out fires, you're asking endless questions and dealing with constant interruptions, it can feel very difficult to move forward and actually get yourself to that proactive um, state, and that's really difficult. So I want you to just share one word in the chat that describes your current workload, please, just so we have an idea. Yeah, overwhelming, full. Anybody else want to add? Lots. Okay. So what happens is when you're in that reactive state, you're not getting yourself in a position where you can actually plan ahead, where you can sort of anticipate what's going to happen. And it can feel very frustrating. And when I worked, and we used to have a peak of work come in every January, and it was incredibly stressful, not just for me, but for the teams as well, because we never had quite enough resource to deal with it, and it would take several months to get through it and get ourselves back on an even keel. And then one day I sat down with my lead, who we said, this can't continue. This isn't going to work. So we had to make some headspace to sit down and work out what we needed to do. And what we realised was that all this work was coming in, we could actually preempt it by going out to the customer and saying, if you send it to us in, say, October, November, and December, we will work on it then, and we will get it out to you the 1st of January, which is when you really want it for, instead of them getting it several months later. So what we realised was we had to do lots of communication. So we set up a team to do that. So sometimes just being having that headspace to be able to look and see, what can I do to stop these peaks of work? What can I do to smooth it all out really helps us. And I think as managers and leaders, one of the things that we should be doing is looking at the trends of the work that we're getting in. Is there a pattern? And is there a way that we can then smooth that out? And you can't always, but at least by looking at it, you're then prepared. Okay, so let's move on. So I want you to go into a couple of groups, and I want you to discuss what's your biggest daily interruption and how much time do you spend firefighting versus actually leading proactively, and what's the actual impact on you personally. How was that?
Really interesting. Good to share experience with people who are having similar woes.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you think it's you on your own, but when you start talking, you're all having similar experiences, aren't you? So, yeah, it's really interesting to have that conversation. So we'll just wait for everybody else to come back. I think we're missing just one person. Oh, maybe we've lost them. I don't know. Right, we'll start anyway. So feeding back, um, what was the biggest daily interruption were you seeing? Anybody?
Emails
Emails?
and just staff asking questions. How do I do?
Okay. And when they ask you questions, what do you tend to do? Do you tend to give them the answer?
It's a bit of both. It's to sort of signpost them to where it is, or to speak to their sort of team leader about it, to say, here's where the guidance, I've given training. And then sometimes it's just an emergency crisis that you end up doing it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's that fact that you step in. Okay. Anybody else?
Similar from our group to agree to like team pools questions. Can I just have a 5-minute chat, which is often much longer, and then juggling or juggling lots of different priorities, or even Teams channels and all the different traffic that comes through that, and wanting to keep an eye on it, but recognizing it takes up a lot of time.
Yeah. Okay. So there are ways around this. So as we go through, we'll kind of look at that. So a quick poll. I mean, does anybody want to add anything else before we move on? No? Okay. So what percentage of your day would you say you are spending reacting versus planning?
About 75%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that 75% reacting?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's about 60% reacting for me.
Right.
It
Okay.
used to be 50%. I mean, 60%, but I've managed to bring it down to about 30 now.
So that's good. That's good. There'll always be a percentage of time that you'll be reacting. There is no way you can get away from it at times, but the more time you can start being proactive, the more that you'll move it so that your team are empowered, that they get on with it, and that the business is flowing without you being there. And the ideal position to be in as a manager and a leader is that when you're not there, the business just works. And we often get hooked on this thing is that we need to be indispensable. Well, we don't. When we have done a good job, we know we can walk away. And I hadn't really realised this until many years ago when I had to have a month off for an operation, and I left my team. And they kept sending me pictures of Basil Brush sitting in my chair and saying, we're doing it, we're doing it, we're getting there. And I didn't have to worry at all. When I came back, they'd hit the targets that we'd had easily. So sometimes we get hooked on this thing that we need to be there and we need to be answering all the questions. And what we sometimes need to do is step back. Okay? So let's just move on now. If I can get this screen out. It doesn't want to play today, technology. There we go. Right. What can you see? Can you see it? So this is what we see. We see common interruptions, as you've just articulated, endless emails, approval seeking as well. You will have people that you will notice who just want confirmation, who are just not confident. So this is about you thinking about how you're going to build their confidence. And not covered today, but one of the best things I think that you can do is work on their strengths. When you concentrate on their strengths, you build their confidence, you motivate them, you inspire them, you make them passionate. So one of the things I'm going to be doing after this call is do some emails, and one of them I will do is about strengths building. Okay, and how that's really important. Okay, so now I want to talk about expectations and boundaries, because we really quite often don't set our boundaries and our expectations to people. And quite a lot of the one-to-ones that I've been doing recently have been around people not clearly articulating the task and being very specific about what they wanted, and also not setting expectations around what they expected that person to achieve by when, and being very fuzzy. And so we need to be really articulate in how we tell people things, because they don't know what they don't know. So we need to really say it. So here we've got an unclear expectation of the person. I'll get that report done soon. And then when we actually are very specific, you're saying that you're going to do it by 4 p.m. Friday. So if you reverse that for your employee, the more specific you can be about when you expect things, then that helps. The other thing I would recommend is that when you have an employee and you give them that task, you say, now, if for any reason you can't make it, I want you to tell me. I want you to come and let me know. I want there to be no surprises. My favourite saying was no surprises. If I knew, we could work with it. But if you don't tell me, we can't do anything. It's a shock, and it means the team missed their deadline. So if you're very clear, another thing you can do with your expectations is set up a team meeting where you talk about what your expectations are from the team and individuals as a group. And then you ask them what their expectations of you are as well, because it's very clear you need to have that two-way communication. So that's really important to do. And even if you're part way, you've been managing them for a while, it doesn't do any harm to have that conversation again and remind them and just say, I'm reiterating this. If you get a new team member in, ideal opportunity. Okay. So what I want you to do is think about one of the tasks that your team have right now and think about how do you ask it and whether you could change and make it more specific. Anybody wants to share, that's fine. So what sort of tasks do you have that you could be discussing with your team member? I'm going to put Ali on the spot. What sort of task could you be thinking about?
Oh, one of my kind of slightly slipperier members of the team who I'm kind of working through some performance management with is somebody who has a lot of direct reports, and I'm having to be quite specific with how I'm kind of getting her to feed back to her team when things aren't done as they need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really drilling down to the detail. And we should be doing that anyway, but we tend to, when we think people are just okay about everything, we just tell them, can you just get this done for me? And quite often we forget to say exactly what we want and when we want it by. Yeah. And I had a manager do this to me. He set two of my team up to do a presentation, but what he didn't do was he wasn't really clear on exactly what he wanted in that presentation. We went into the team meeting, they started doing their presentation, and he said, no, 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 that's not what I wanted. Stop, stop. I mean, he was a micromanager, I have to say, but it was like, go away and do it again. We're like, well, you haven't really specified what you wanted. And I'd actually thought they were doing a really good job. And what their content was brilliant, but it wasn't what he wanted. So you need to be really sure in your mind that you have articulated, and then make sure you get them to reflect back at you what you've told them and check their understanding. Because we often forget that. We're so busy, we're rushing through, we just don't think to check the understanding. Okay?
Is it best to sort of do periodic check-ins rather than wait until a particular milestone is hit, right? Because it's too much time spent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's not micromanaging, it's just check-ins, everything okay? Are you on track? What support do you need? It's that kind of thing. And just tell me where you've got to. So, because I'm, perhaps doing a report to a senior leader or whatever, I need to understand where we are. And that is fine. It's when we're on their back continually, when we're saying, come on, I want an update today, tomorrow, the next day. That is just micromanaging, in my opinion, especially if you're checking in several times a day. And I have experienced that. And then when you do it and they say, oh, that's not the right way, I wanted it this way, that's just adding to the issues, really. Okay? Right. Any questions before we move on? Okay. So some of the things that you can do, you can block out, like Ali, you said you blocked out time. But what you've got to do is when somebody comes to you, do you really need to answer them straight away? Unless it's an absolute emergency, what you can say to them is, okay, yeah, I really want to make time for you, but I've got this urgent piece of work that I need to get done. So what we'll do is we'll agree to meet at a time and, a day. And, it may be later on in the day, it may be the next morning, but tell them that so they know. And then you're preserving your focused work time. Okay. And it feels hard to do it at first because you feel as a manager and a leader that you should be available for your team, but you've got jobs to do. And as you said, you've blocked out time. So, whatever you use, I use Outlook, I block out time to do certain tasks. And you've just got to be quite ruthless about saying, unless it's really urgent, it's going to have to wait and I'll come back to you. Let's agree a time and a place now. Okay? And then the other thing we're quite often scared to do is delegate tasks. And it's quite an interesting one because I used to have managers who would say, Oh, look, Nicola, I've tried delegating these tasks and they don't get it right. And do you know what? I'm not going to bother again. I'm just going to do it myself. And if you're falling into that trap, you need to look back at yourself. How did you delegate that task? Was it to the right person? Was it the right skills? Was it the right experience? And we're going to talk about this shortly. But you really need to look at how you carried out that delegation, because 9 times out of 10, it's because of the way that you did it, not them. And that's something we tend to forget to do and reflect. Another thing that you can do to help your team is create a decision framework. And that's really important because that makes it easy for them to know when they need to come to you and when they can make the decisions. And I am going to share at the end one that I've done for you to help you. Okay, so you can just adapt it for yourselves then. All right, so that's that. And why do we find setting boundaries difficult, do you think?
It takes strength to say no
Yeah,
because you need to be aware of who you are and what you can do and what your limits are.
yeah, absolutely. It is hard to say no, um, but we need to get stronger at saying no because it's important to protect ourselves as much as the rest of the team. Okay, and it's practicing. And if you feel uncomfortable, then just link it to something that's more important. Say, no, I can't do this at the moment. I'll have to come back to you. Or can you go away and look at what you're thinking to start with? And then we can have a discussion because I've got this to do. And if you can explain, but you shouldn't have to explain, then you will obviously feel a little bit more at ease because it's that feeling at ease when you say no, isn't it? Yeah, because we are naturally taught that we've got to be helpful to everybody. So yeah. Anything else that you think sort of stops us with boundaries?
I think for me, it's unclear expectations from senior managers and other managers I support, and because that's sort of vague, it's it might be, oh well, you don't deliver on this. Well, have you got any specific examples? And this has happened a few times, and it's like, well, no. So it's a
Right.
perception that I'm dealing with,
Yeah.
and so it sort of feels like, well, if I don't deliver, then it's going to feed into that sort of criticism. So I need to be drilling down to them and saying, can you be specific, and then actually explain, look, this piece of work has come in urgently, had planned to do this piece of work for you for next week. I can't do both. And equally, I support 5 areas. You're one, and I know they want to be. Each of them feels that they're the most important.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you've actually articulated it there really well. So what you need to do is be really clear that they spell out their expectations
Mm.
and you need to put your boundaries in place. And it's okay to say, I'm looking after 5 of you, so I can't do all 5, manage all 5 of your workload in one go. So we
Mm-hmm.
need to, plan a timeline for this. It's okay to say that. And it's okay as well to say, I feel this when this is happening. So don't be frightened of having the conversation. And it sounds to me like you know exactly what you need to do. So that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
I mean, in that example, I did sort of say, look, I do have 5 areas to support. So what they did was they went to my manager. So that they said, this is really important. They need to do it for me, without then saying, okay, what's going to happen to the rest of it?
Yeah.
There's a lot of that goes on. You just, so if I say no, I can't due to work commitments because I've got this really important piece of work to do, then they just jump above and put more pressure on that way.
So in some ways, I think what I would do personally is, I don't know whether you've got one, is an action log. And you put all your actions on there that you've got to do and you prioritize them so that when you go and talk to your manager, you've got it there in writing. It's very clear. And then he or she starts to understand your workload.
Yeah.
I just think that that's something, and you could rag status it, so you could even color code it, so it's easier to pick up when you've got something that really is urgent to something that's this is looming and
Yes.
it's getting pretty near it, so it's amber. And certainly from my EU project leading days, that's what I did to keep on top of things and to be able to show the amount of work that the team actually had. So it does pay off, and we tend to think of an action log just like a to-do list, but when we actually document it properly into a workbook, we actually start to show people the evidence of what's going on as well. Another thing you can use as well is a team implementation plan, but that's something for perhaps another day. Yeah. Okay. And you can look team implementation plan up on the internet and you will find some examples as well. And they're really useful. Any other reasons why we think setting boundaries might be difficult? No? Okay, well, one I've seen is rejection, fear of conflict or rejection. Don't want to have those, conversations where people might get a bit mad with them, or they might say, well, that's it, I've had enough, that kind of thing. So it's just something to watch out for and look at, if you're not setting your boundaries and your expectations, what's stopping you? And do some reflection and some journaling on it to really identify. And when it happens at a particular time, look at the situation. Was it the person? Was it what they asked you? Just really dig deep and reflect, and then think about what can I do next time to change this. Okay, let's look at this. So I'm going to give you a decision checklist. Can you see this one? Okay, well, first of all, time management. I'm out of date. I'm out of sync on my slides. Right, okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about quickly now the Eisenhower thing. Do you all use it, or have you used variations, etc.? So it's about determining what's important, what's urgent, okay? And so you tag it not important and not urgent. I wouldn't even be touching it. I used to have this really bad habit. Something had come in, didn't seem that important to me, note, and it wasn't urgent. So I would leave it in my email box for ages. And do you know what always happened? In every single case, it got superseded. So I was always glad I hadn't done any work on it. And then you've got your not important but urgent, you're important but not urgent, and you're important and urgent. Okay, so you're always going to do your important and urgent first, which is why we need to get better at being proactive so that we spend a percentage of our time doing that, and then we're getting on to the other things. Okay, so when we manage our time better, we improve our efficiency for a start, let alone the teams. And we also gives us time to encourage logical thinking. We actually then helps us think about the ownership and the accountability as well, which we often forget about. And actually, when we feel we're in control, we feel more confident, don't we? So it's really important that we do that. Okay. So looking at that, using that, let's look at this one. Okay. So there are two distinct types of urgent and important activities. Ones that you could not have foreseen, and that's something that comes out of the left field. We've all had those, haven't we? So you've got your urgent and your important activities, the ones that you could not have foreseen, and others that you've left until the last minute. Yeah. So anybody got anything where they could not have foreseen it and it's happened to them?
Had a situation just this morning. I'd planned some me time for personal development and focus time, and I got a call probably about 15 minutes into that to say that a particular control process wasn't working. So effectively it's a workload tracker for a team of about 12 people. So that had stopped working. So that was a top level priority. I had to get investigate what the issue was, speak with IT, put an idea of an IT solution into the programmers, get them to drop what they were doing to fix it so that team of 12 could continue doing the work.
Yeah, so that's absolutely important and urgent, yeah? So sometimes though we have things that we know are looming and we procrastinate, don't we? So it's really important that we kind of get control of that procrastination so we can stop those last minute activities. And as you said, George, sometimes you just can't avoid issues and crises. So a suggestion is to leave some time in your schedule, which actually was your personal development time, for unexpected issues. And then if you then have that time and it's not filled by an unexpected issue, great, you can get on with something else. So important but not urgent is classed as the activities that help you achieve your personal and professional goals and complete important work. So this is the time when you need to really make sure you've got plenty of time to do these properly so they don't become urgent. And again, that goes back to the procrastination. So again, leave enough time in your schedule to deal with unforeseen problems. And then your not important but urgent is that tasks that stop you from achieving your goals. Ask yourself whether you can reschedule or even delegate them. Okay? And we get hooked on this thing that we need to do everything and we don't necessarily. And so then you're not important and you're not urgent. These activities actually are just a distraction. So if you can identify they're a distraction, they're not important, they're not urgent, don't do them. Okay? So that's a quick whistle tour of that. You can find more about the internet about it. Okay. Okay, so now I spoke to a lady this morning on one of my onboarding calls, and it was brilliant because they do a 15-minute stand-up call. Now, if you're virtually working, you just do it where you all come in for 15 minutes every morning, and they share what their top priority is, what the blockers are and what the questions are, and also it will help you pick up any problems. It's really great because everybody knows where they stand, what's going on. It gives the opportunity for communication, and I really can't say enough about this because when I was leading EU exit projects, this was absolutely key. And some days we would have a quick call, 5 minutes, and there'd be no problems. Everybody was doing what they should be doing, and there were no blockers. And so we were able to get on. But other times, somebody would raise an issue, a problem, and we'd be able to brainstorm quickly together for 5, 10 minutes so that we could then move on and everybody could do what they needed to do for the day. Okay, so I really would recommend this approach. And some people feel like it's overkill, but honestly, it builds communication. And then the other thing I think you need to do is think about a quick check-in with your individuals on weekly would be ideal, but let's be real in this world. Most of us haven't got time for that to do 30 minutes with every team member every week, but 4 to 6 weekly where you're talking about the issues that they're working on. But it's really great to start with talking about what they worked on and what has gone really well. So you're starting really positive, and they can then explore how they did it, what strengths did they use, how did that contribute, and then you'll pick up their strengths and be able to think about how can you use those strengths to support other team members. Okay. And also talk about, what could have been even better in the previous few weeks. And if you start doing it that way, they will come to you and they'll say, oh, this went really well, but oh my goodness, I wish I'd done this differently. And they'll learn lessons that way. It gets them to reflect. Okay. So again, they're two of the things I really recommend doing, because that starts to get them to think more proactively as well. And what you want them to do is take the initiative at the end of the day. Okay? Okay. Now, problem solving. And again, after this event shortly, I will send you a 3Cs video, and we'll look at that in a minute. But when you work with your team in these 15-minute calls, or any other way you want to do it in a weekly team meeting, you can prioritize problems with urgent and complexity for a start, but get the problems. I went in a GP's practice where problems were being raised and nobody was doing anything with them. Morale was really bad. And the knock-on effect was, because there was no communication going on, because no problem solving was going on, the GP practice was about to fail unless something drastically changed. So when you build an avenue for people to escalate problems, and they know that you're actually dealing with them and listening and working with them to resolve, then that builds the people skills, it builds your skills, it builds morale, it builds performance. So really get them. So when they come in, the first thing to do goes back to coaching, really. So assessing your team members and where they're at. So if they're a new team member, you wouldn't necessarily go into coaching. You would look at whether they needed direction. But what you can do is you can ask them, where have you looked? What documents have you looked in? What guides have you looked in? Who have you asked? Instead of giving them the answer straight away. Okay? That's one of the ways to stop people coming to you all the time. Because I had a manager who did that, and I used to think, oh, he's a flipping nuisance. I just want the answer and I just want it now. But he taught me a really brilliant skill, was to go and check things and look things up first. And I see it even now because, my daughters will say something to me, and I'll look at them and I'll go and Google it straight away if they want an answer to something. But they never Google. Actually, what I should be doing is saying to them, where have you looked and what have you searched first? Because that's what they need. Okay? So you've got, sometimes, instead of spoon feeding, actually get them to think about what they need to do. And then have they, like we said, asked a colleague? Can they consult someone who's handled this before instead of coming to you? Yeah? And then, if they're still stuck, bring it to that daily team meeting that you're having, that stand-up meeting where you can discuss it, okay? And then, if it's really urgent, if you've got a chat function, can they not message you? And then you can get back to them when it's appropriate. All right. So don't automatically think you have to be available all the time. Think about other ways that you can manage that. Any questions? Okay. So here is something we used to use. So it's, let me just, can you see it? Right, there we go. So this is a really useful tool. You can have this as a document that all the team can access. And if they've got a problem, they put it under concern, but it has to relate to the business. So they need to show that it links to the business. So they write the problem in there. And then when you have your call with everybody, you can say, okay, 5 minutes, quick, we've got this problem. Let's discuss it. So what do we think's causing it? Okay. And use techniques like the 5 whys to drill down, or Mr. Rudyard Kipling's 5 wise men, is it 5? Why, what, when, how, etc. Use those to drill down to find out what's the real cause. Okay. And then when you've got that, then you can work out what the countermeasure is. So what you're going to do to resolve that problem. Now, capture it, because sometimes what you think it is, and you think you've got the answer, you go away, you do the thing, but you still got the problem. So then you need to go back to what you'd already written and carry on drilling down till you get to the right answer. But you have this, but this isn't your responsibility. This is the team to fill it in, and then you delegate to one of the team members and say to them, okay, I want you to follow up on this. I want you to lead on this. And then you're empowering them and building their skills. Okay? Any questions? I will give you a video afterwards, 60-second video from the NHS, and it's brilliant. It just walks you through it quick. Any questions? No? Okay. So again, this is about empowering your team to resolve things themselves. Okay, so always make sure you have a clear escalation criteria. So if you've got your decision-making matrix, your checklist, so people know exactly when they can make a decision and when they can't. So another tool that you can use is RACI. So who's responsible, accountable, who you need to communicate with. And I'm sure Ali can tell me what the I is, because I can never remember.
Oh,
Informed, isn't it? Yeah, that's it. So if you are clearly mapping out those roles and responsibilities and you use that kind of racy model, then you will start to build where people can make decisions easier. They know what their responsibilities are and where they need to pass it on. So have a clear escalation criteria and think about anything with serious complaints, major grievances. Obviously, you need to see that and have sight of that and be looking after it, even if you delegate it to somebody else. And again, key client issues, you need to be aware of what's going on and any issues affecting multiple departments and anything where it's financial decisions. So this kind of escalates. These bits are what need to come to you, and then you might need to go to your manager. Okay? Okay, I'm going to discuss delegation quickly because I do think this is my favourite model, I have to say, situational leadership. So what we do is we look at the skills level and the experience of the person to decide whether they are need directing. So we're telling them specifically exactly what they need to do, when and how, and we're checking in regularly with them. Then you've got your coaching method where you'll talk about they've got some experience, they're certainly growing as a person, they're really developing, they're getting the experience in the business and with their role. So can you coach them? Can you say to them, so how would you deal with this? What would your approach be? So you're making them realise that you have confidence in them. And then you get to supporting, where you're just there in the background, you're just checking in occasionally. They're doing what they need to do and you're getting the results. And then you get to delegating, where you just hand it over to them and you let them get on with it. And then you'll be able to judge by the outcomes you get. And we often get hooked on, knowing how they're doing things. But what really matters is the outcomes. Okay. And so when we can see the outcomes of what we wanted, unless it's something we're doing where it's morally we need to understand, or financially or legally there are some repercussions where we might need to understand how they did it. Generally we can just pass things off to them when we're delegating and they are able to just get on with it, which is where you want to be. Okay. And again, this is, as I said, this is where I saw managers get stuck. They would give somebody something. They wouldn't really look at the skills level. They wouldn't look at the experience level. They would just hand it over. They wouldn't even be really clear when we talk about expectations and boundaries. And then it would go horribly wrong. And then they'd go, oh, no, I'm never doing that again. And with me as their manager, it was, yes, you are. Just need to reflect and think about what went wrong. Why did it go wrong? What is it that you can learn from it and try again? And we often assume people know more than they do. So just checking in with them, as Hugh says, will help them really know that they can come to you for support. Okay. Plus, if you're having that 15-minute stand up, they know they can raise it there. Okay. Now, I have got a checklist for that as well, which I'm going to give you so that you can check to see where a person sits and you can use it to assess where they sit on this. Okay. So what time are we at? Oh, we've hit the 2 o'clock. So what I want you to think about is just put one thing in the chat, is what are you going to go away today and implement? One thing. Yeah, problem solving triage. Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah. Yeah, I love this. Asking my director their expectations of me. Louise, protect my time better. Brilliant. Yeah. 3 C's. Excellent. Excellent. So you'll get the video and I'll send you the slides as well, so you get the format of the form that you need. And be clearer on my expectations with deadlines. Yeah. Really important, isn't it? And tell them no surprises. Do make sure you say that, because then they will come and tell you if there's a problem and then you can resolve it. Escalation criteria. Brilliant. Okay, well, I shall be reminding you all of what this. So we will, you will definitely hear from me. I will send you the links out shortly in the emails. Okay, and good luck. And if you are feeling like you need more support or help, I do have the Managers Academy. And it's much more than just videos and training. There's fortnightly Ask Me Anything calls, plus a monthly training where we do something similar to this together as a group. And it's only £17 per month. It is going up at the end of March. So, you know, jump in if you really need that support and help. But it's, you will tap into my over 30 years of experience leading and managing. And certainly I've got lots of stories I can share. So there you go. All right, everybody. Anybody want to ask anything before we go? Yeah, exactly, George. Sometimes we do forget all these things. I think when we're leading over work and even in projects, we need to think about what trends are we seeing as well. So don't forget that one, because we often don't make the time to look at trends that are going on in the business and our team. So yeah, that's brilliant. Anything else from anybody? Any questions? No?
Thank you very much for the session.
Thank
That's
you,
all right.
Nicola.
Yeah, it's been great to have some time out just to think about how we do things rather than just carrying on doing it.
Exactly. It's really important that we do take that time out every so often. So do look out for my workshops, because they are free and they will give you a time out to really think about things and reflect and grow. Okay?
All right. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you
you.
very much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.